Hey there, in this video we're going to talk about methods attached to strings and lists. So one thing that helps a lot with Python is to realize that everything in Python is an object, or perhaps is a name that refers to an object. Let's say I make a string here, s, and let's go with s equals hello, something boring. So s is an object in Python, and I mean that in an object-oriented programming sort of sense. S contains data, in this case the letters HELLO, but it also includes references to functions that affect that data. So if we just look at here our help for s, we can see s is a string, and you even see the word object in here, string object. If we do s dot and then hit tab a couple times, we can see that there are things attached to s, kind of like s being a module, but it's a little bit different than a module. It's what's called an object. So it has functions that are attached to it, functions that will operate on s itself. And we've got things like find and lower. Let's try lower here. So s.lower. S.lower is a function. You don't have to give it any argument. You can see right here in the help. It just returns a copy of the string, all lowercase. For us, that won't actually do anything because it was already lowercase. There's a cousin of this called upper. That's maybe a little bit more interesting. It changes it all to uppercase for us. So this is a little bit different. We didn't do upper s. We did s.upper. I don't think upper s is even going to work because there is no built-in function called upper. So this is a function that is attached to the object s called a method. In fact, everything in Python has this. Even numbers have this. It's kind of hard to get to for numbers, like 3. You hit tab, it's going to be like, well, do you mean a decimal place? But what's actually going on here is we've created an integer object 3. So we can do I equals 3 and see if there are things attached to I. There are, in fact. So we can do things like, there's not too much to do to an integer. We can look at what's the bit length of this. Okay, well, so it's 2 bits to represent the number 3. So yeah, everything in Python has stuff like this attached to it. In fact, if you want to do things like add 2 and 3 together, what you're actually doing is you are calling a function named add with these dunders around it. So the plus is just a shortcut for doing this. So I can add 2 to 3 this way, and it'll give me 5. Nobody would write their code this way, but everything in Python is an object. Now, for the most part, that's hidden away from us. We don't really have to worry about it, but it's really useful for things like strings and lists. So on strings, we saw lowercase, we saw uppercase. There's some others that are kind of cool. So we could do starts with. We can even start typing it in tab complete. So does hello start with H? Yeah. Does it start with HE maybe? Yeah. Does it start with HO? No. So that's a nice way to check what's at the beginning of the string. There's also an ends with. We can do replace. So if I want to replace that H with a J and finally get that jello I've been wanting since the last video, there we can go. We do that. Now if you're thinking, well, wait a minute, you're not allowed to change strings. Well, I didn't. S has not been changed. I've made a new string out of the pieces of string S and the letter J. So that's how we get around that immutability. We just make new ones. Other ones that are useful are strip and split. Let's make a different string here. So let's make S is equal to, let's put a bunch of spaces around it. Like this is something we read out of a data file here and we want to clean it up. We might want to do something like ask for the floating point value of S. Seen this kind of thing before. In this case, we were all right with the spaces that were there. S is smart enough to handle it. But let's say that our file had like dots in it for some terrible, terrible reason. Now if we run that, it's kind of mad, but we can do s.strip to help us out here. and tell it I want to strip away dots. And then it'll be able to handle it for us. As by default, strip will just strip away the white space. We saw that wasn't really necessary for float. In other cases, you do want to strip away the white space. And then split will split your string based on some kind of separator. So let's say that, again, we're reading from a file, and in our file we have something like this, like that string that kind of looks like a list, but it's a string. What we can do there is s.split, and it will split it apart for us and then give us a list of each of the strings that were in it. By default, it splits on the white space, so we've got like 1 comma in here, but we can fix that easily. We can split on commas, and then we'll get a more expected result. Let's look quickly at some list methods before we wrap up this video. So if I make a list 1, 2, 3, 4, I guess I could have just used the list from the previous result, but let's say we've got my list 1, 2, 3, 4. We look at what is in L. I need to run this cell first before I can start checking what's in it, because it won't exist until I run the cell. But we have right at the top one of the more useful ones, append. Index is pretty useful. Sort, maybe reverse to flip around. So what append does is it sticks things onto the end. So if I want to stick a 5 onto the end of this, I can do that. Now if I look at L, L has been changed in place. This is that mutability at work. Anything we did to S made new lists or made new strings, but here we're changing L right in place. So right in place, we attach something onto it. We can ask for where is something. It's kind of like searching my string, like where is the 2 in this? And it's at an index of 1. So this is index 0, index 1. Right there is where the 2's at. And then we can sort. Well, in this case, we don't see anything because it was already sorted. Let's make a different list. Let's go with Jenny's phone number, 8675309. Okay. Now let's sort that. Now we can see here's the phone number sorted. Now, here we got to be a little bit careful about one thing. We don't want to do something like sorted is actually a built-in function. Let's call it L sorted. Be careful about doing this. L sorted equals L.sort. What do you think L sorted is equal to? Well, nothing came out, right? That's because it's been set equal to none. Why? Because this sorted method doesn't return anything. It returns none by default. It changes the list in place. So list methods usually change the list in place. String methods will give you new strings. There aren't very many tuple methods, but tuple methods will, if they return something, will return a new tuple. So in this video, we've learned about methods, which are functions that are attached to objects. Just about everything in Python has methods because everything in Python is in fact an object. But typically that's hidden away from us, and mostly we're just going to use it on things like lists or strings.